We're now joined by Brittany Shepard of Yahoo News. Brittany, what is going to be the approach from each side tonight when the subject turns to the ongoing pandemic?
Well, Joe Biden is certainly going to make sure that every time an ancillary topic is brought up, it is always tied back to coronavirus. His advisors have told us this much. Every time Joe Biden speaks publicly about the president, always all roads essentially lead to what he believes to be the president's bungling of his coronavirus response. As far as the president is concerned, his narratives about COVID have been a bit more far-fetched. We know that, he's been promising a vaccine any day now. I'm sure he'll bring that up again. I think the president, whenever he speaks about coronavirus, is a little bit more self-reflective. I'll put it that way. Talks a lot about his administration's perceived accomplishments, shutting down the border for travel from China, Europe, et cetera, et cetera. And, something about both of these septuagenarians is that nothing new usually comes from them. The patterns that we hear out in the field are the patterns I believe that we're going to be hearing tonight.
Yeah, Brittany, I feel like, what Trump is saying on the coronavirus just changes constantly. There was, first there was no coronavirus really, and it would be gone right away. Then it's like, well, it happened and we conquered it and it's over. Now it's like, well, it's around, but it's not really hurting kids. Trump was downplaying it, then he wasn't. What seems to be the if there is one, what seems to be the main approach and strategy the Trump campaign is taking on coronavirus these days? Have they settled on an approach and a talking point?
Well, Amanda, you're absolutely right. The president and his campaign have been all over the place. The targets seem to move and the goalposts seem to move, miles and miles away each time. It's hard to try to understand what the objective might be. I think a lot of it is throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks with voters, what can villainize Joe Biden in the most effective way for them and what makes them look the best. Obviously, with this Bob Woodward book coming out and audio being released of President Trump saying that he was intentionally downplaying or mischaracterizing the coronavirus threat to the public, there are a lot of arrows on the president and on the White House and the Trump campaign. And certainly, they know they're slipping. They know Joe Biden is lapping them in certain coronavirus hotspots. So I think that's why we're seeing stuff all over the map. And it's kind of difficult to understand where he might go next. But I think a good prediction is perhaps into the absurd.
Brittany, what have you been able to learn about the Biden campaign's debate prep? We know that they've had a lid on the campaign for a few days as he prepares. We know he's got a very experienced debate team led by Ron Klain, who's been with Biden for a long time, and I think actually played Donald Trump in some of the debate prep. But how have they been getting him ready? And what do they think are the big opportunities for Biden, and what are the risks?
So, Dan, Biden's debate prep is kind of extended from his daily coronavirus and economic prep. At least 3 or 4 times a week, he has an hour call with economic advisors and medical advisors on the state of play, on the economy, and on coronavirus. So Joe Biden has started with large pamphlets to go through, all the subject matters that he wants to. And then from studying his books, he's moved on to mock debates. You're right, with Ron Klain, who used to wear a big baggy Trump suit and question Joe Biden. I think the theatrics have gone down this year, but he's been in several days of extensive prep, different folks playing different parts of Trump's administration, and just to try to, pin him against the wall and see what Joe Biden can do. I think crucially that why he's called these really early lids some days, because Joe Biden takes things very personally, especially if you bring up his family. Or I think you might hear from the Trump campaign or for Joe Biden himself, from Donald Trump himself, bringing up, accusations of sexual assault by Tara Reade to Joe Biden. And the campaign knows that Joe Biden can bungle. He can speak for a very long time. He can go off topic. He wasn't the strongest debater in Democratic primaries. And so Joe Biden has allotted a lot of time, tried to stay on message, keep it tight and keep it right. I think the question is, can he do that? Can he clear the low bar that Donald Trump has given him without, getting in his own way? And I'm not really sure what's going to happen tonight, like I said, especially if Beau Biden comes up or Tara Reade comes up.
Brittany, we've been talking about COVID-19 all evening here, and of course, really since March. And you wonder if there's any fatigue setting in, and that's an issue I think that even Joe Biden was wondering about. Here's what he had to say about that.
What worries me now is we've been living with this pandemic for so long. I worry we're risking becoming numb to the toll that is taken on us and our country and communities like this. We can't let that happen. We can't lose the ability to feel the sorrow and the loss and the anger for so many lives lost. We can't let the numbers become statistics, a background noise, just a blur that we see in the nightly news.
And Brittany, it sort of speaks to this question that I think a lot of us have, which is, hasn't everyone already made up their minds? And is there a way that actually either candidate can move the needle? And who do you think can best do that tonight?
Well, that's the $1 million question. I mean, we're in election season. There's no longer an election day. Over 1 million Americans have already voted, right? I think this time in 2016, I think it was 10,000. Just that number is such a stark increase, how many people are voting absentee, voting by mail. There's not a lot of folks left to convince. I think the number of vulnerable swing state is under 10% of all voters. I think that Donald Trump has a lot to prove to those 10% of voters that the last couple weeks of the campaign is not a referendum on his presidency, right? A lot of times he's going to be having to play defense. He knows that Joe Biden has more money than him right now. He knows that Joe Biden is lapping him in polls in crucial states right now. So I think a lot of what tonight means is for the candidates to prove things to themselves and to their base. Because like I said, so many people have already voted. And a lot of folks who I talk to feel like they have fatigue because so many folks have already died. 200,000 Americans have died. Many, many more are sick. Look at a state like Florida that has essentially said, no more lockdown. Folks, go out and do what you can when you want. People kind of forget that this is something that's affecting the entire country. And they vote with, their own gut, and they vote against their single issue. So if tonight's going to move the needle for anyone, it's for folks with fat pocketbooks who can donate more money in the 11th hour to push more ads, to get more space, to hit that really narrow target of 10% of the voters who haven't made up their mind yet in order to kind of cross that finish line.
So, Brittany, one topic we haven't talked about yet that we've been told will come up tonight is race and violence, which is not my words, it's what's been billed. How do you think that will play out? And which candidate do you see having an advantage on this issue?
Well, I think it's going to play out one of two ways. From the Trump campaign and from Trump himself, you're going to hear a lot of talk of law and order. When he goes to cities affected by all cities are affected by racism and police brutality. But when he goes to cities of those high profile, he meets with law enforcement because that plays to his base. And, honestly, the president has said many questionable things about folks who aren't white. And the internet's memory is long, and so is the moderator. So like I said before, I think he has a lot to play defensive on. One of his guests tonight is Alice Marie Johnson. She is a Black woman, a nonviolent drug offender who he and Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, funny enough, helped get out of prison and commute her sentence. So if he's asked by Chris Wallace, well, you said this, that, and the other, racially insensitive thing, he could point to his audience and say, well, look, all this good I did for criminal justice, something that him and his campaign like to repeat again and again and again. Joe Biden, of course, likes to talk a little bit about how he actually doesn't want to defund the police, something Donald Trump will very likely bring up and say, actually, he's a friend of law enforcement. He wants to give more money to those folks, though. He also tries to do a job of being empathetic towards Black pain, though there are lots of progressives who say that Joe Biden does not go anywhere far enough.
So many points to be looking for this evening, Brittany. Thank you so much for joining us and for pointing them out to us.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.